All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We're gonna have the next panel around about DePIN. And so the goal here is we talk about infra, we talk with VC this morning, then we talk about go-to-market, then we went back all the way around to what was the latest trend in AI, because AI and DePIN are very interrelated at the moment. And now I think, are on a place that is pretty close to the go-to-market. So the theme of this panel is about marketing in DePIN. Can you guys introduce yourself briefly? Who are you? What's your project? What you're doing?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jin. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. I'm head of marketing at Nuffle Labs. We are a company that's putting more assets into more markets, essentially enabling global liquidity across all assets, across all chains. Pretty useful for DePIN, which run access capital. My background, had a growth agency. Before that, I was actually an intensive care anaesthetist for a long time, for like 10 years. And doing this made me realize that users are kind of like patients. They don't know what they want. They never do what you tell them to. And you give them like a route to go through, they'll find something and take the wrong drug. So kind of like users.
Hey everyone, I'm Anjali Geroge. I'm the co-founder of Zero Labs. So we are abstracting away how to build, deploy, and maintain agents. We started with the thesis that there's a need for utility agents in Web3, just like there are in Web2. Built an agent for that, got hired, kind of reached product market fit on that side, and now sort of seeing how we can get contributors and incentivize contributors to help develop vertical specific super agents for Web3. Started my career as an advertising strategist. Been in this industry since 2017. Seen a lot of ebbs and flows, but as more enterprises and businesses set up, we do really believe that there is going to be a one-person billion-dollar enterprise in the next 5 years, and we think we're going to be the team to enable that.
Nice.
Hi everyone, my name is Keenan Olson. I'm the head of growth at Allora. What we do at Allora is we are the collective intelligence layer, so we aggregate multiple machine learning models and be able to provide inferences to different projects such as DeFi and DePIN and these different projects that you see in the crypto. Previously, as one of the first employees at Chainlink, helped launch their community and their whole marketing team, and I was there for 5 years and started at Allora about a year ago.
All right, thank you. The first question I want to ask is to all of you guys. Some of you have a background in Web3 already, some of you have a background in Web2 and how to make the move. I think one of the challenge that was quoted before in the earliest panel was the fact that in DePIN you have to deal with both sides, right? Web2, Web3, and how do you guys deal with it in terms of marketing? How do you solve that in your current project?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge that you see, especially within Allora. There's two sides of the whole network and ecosystem. So you have the supply, which is these different machine learning engineers that are going to be creating these models, putting them onto the network. That's more traditional that you see of what you would say like a traditional data scientist. On the other hand, you have these projects that like a DeFi project that's looking to integrate a different prediction model for their DeFi app or for an AI agent to be able to create self-trading agents. And so there's two different happy mediums, and trying to find that is definitely a challenge. And I think like it ultimately starts with education on both sides of like how do you meet in the middle and bring the traditional side into the crypto world.
Yeah, I mean, having worked in Web2 advertising and then led marketing at Tron for almost 4 years, I will tell you the worlds are vastly different in how they approach marketing. Web2 marketing in many ways, and like trying to bring that into Web3 these days, a lot of it is data-driven and trying to understand your customer, where they are, trying to meet them. Web3 marketing, at least historically, has been heavily about how much noise and volume can you create and how much attention can you gather. Web2 is a distribution game, or like a revenue generation game, and that's what you're kind of aiming towards. You're trying to get paying customers. Web3 is all about attention. Like how much mind share can your project generate? And it's very hard when you're trying to bridge those two worlds, like when you're thinking about DePIN and Web3, because you're trying to target both markets at the same time. You want to get your Web2 users to use these like products, or actually like, set up your devices, your towers, set it up in your car. You want lots of people and you want your like distribution in that sense. But at the same time, the way you incentivize them is through these Web3 guardrails, and it's a lot more about attention there. So it's a like a balance in my sense.
Nice.
These are good points. I think when you zoom out a lot of this stuff, whether it's crypto, whether it's Web2 markets, it's supply and demand marketplaces, how do you connect them, right? The traditional view in crypto is that you have to incentivize supply, because any marketplace, Uber, Airbnb, whatever, they start with the supply first. You don't have the demand side ready. But if we look back, DePIN already existed since the 2000s, right? BitTorrent. People were torrenting since day one. I mean, I was. I mean, actually, no, I shouldn't say that on. But, it happened. And it happened without any financial incentivization. It was just a great thing that people talked about, solved a market inefficiency or a legal inefficiency, I don't know which way. But people just did it, right? So I think when it comes to marketing, you've got to think of three vectors. One, product. It's very different to token in crypto. The token story is all mind share. The product story is how useful can you be, and will someone have like Chamath talks about an aha moment where someone uses your thing. They say, aha, this solves a problem for me. I'll tell my friend. And I think the third vector is like when you're combining different kinds of supply and liquidity, what we're doing for Nuffle, you have to have a system that builds trust. Like people got to trust it. When you're combining AI and DePIN, you're combining a probabilistic AI model with a deterministic DePIN system. So people have to trust that the model is going to do the right thing. So I think those three things will, if you make those things right, then the marketing just works. And apart from that, like logo times logo also works. So.
And on which side of the DePIN did you guys bootstrap? Did you bootstrap on the supply side, the money side, or on the Web3 side? Or what do you recommend? What do you think are the best practices here? What do you see the next trend?
I can only speak to what we're doing in terms of liquidity, assets. So when we're trying to make new markets for DeFi, the essence of all DeFi is yield and collateral, and connecting those two things and reducing market inefficiencies. So the reason that we have, this is kind of relevant to, I think, DePIN and AI as well, is that when you're trying to do these things, you make something and then people are just like, okay, cool, I'm just going to stick with my original thing, that's fine. So you have to have incredible depth in one vertical, nail a niche, and then everything else will flow in. So you can't just say, hey, I'm making the global market for dentists, and then they're not going to join, they don't care. But it's 10% better, it's decentralized. They're like, it's fine, dude, like, I don't want to do it. So you have to do one thing really, really well, make it viral, and then people will just flood in and believe in whatever else you're doing, I think is the principle for everything. I think with AI, it's, there was a Gartner hype curve launch velocity of like, if you mention it, you'll get a 10 million valuation, right? And that's sort of changing a little bit, so we're moving towards the disillusionment, but I think the real use cases are going to come through, and then that's how you can make real progress with marketing. I think you got to understand there's three different games played. It's product, token, and trust. I think that's it.
Could you repeat that question again?
I was asking by which side do you think the most successful DePIN projects start? Do they start from the infrastructure side and the customer side, or do they start from the Web3 side? What do you recommend? What do you think is the best trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the best DePIN projects that I've seen actually start from the supply side. They start thinking like a traditional product offering. They have to, because a lot of it is the infrastructure, right? Like if you don't have the networks, like Helium, for example, if you didn't have enough towers, like it wouldn't make sense. Like you couldn't use the cell service even if you had thousands of customers. So you kind of have to have the service up in place and the infrastructure up in place before these DePIN networks become valuable. But at the same time, then you have to think about like, okay, your marketing, is your like Web3 customer like the person that's going to set up these infrastructure networks? Then you probably have to get some attention driving as well, right? So it's a tough battle, because if you don't have some infrastructure in place and like some proof points for the why somebody should believe in you and somebody should choose to set up a DIMO versus a Hive mapper versus, like a Helium. Like they're going to pick and choose with the limited amount of infrastructure and like money that they have. And so you kind of have to sell them on the why. And the why typically starts with you bootstrapping some amount of infrastructure, some amount of community, some amount of proof points to say you can make X amount if you come in, right? And so that's sort of like the chicken before the egg problem.
Yeah, definitely. What I would say too is just use cases and product. Like product will win every single time. So if you have something that people understand and can use, I think that's why like Helium or Helios is like always like the key example of everything, because it's the Solana phone. Everyone knows a Solana phone. And like that's the most common DePIN use case at the moment. And so as these begin to come about more and more, I think that's like where you'll see this all spread and continue to be bridged.
And so we have a new panelist, Karina, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce DIMO and what you're doing?
I got a nice little shout out here already. Thank you for that. DIMO is a connected car ecosystem. I know that may not mean much to many people. That didn't mean much to me when I started at DIMO. Really, I like to say the simplest way to put it is DIMO is the Oura ring for your car. You get better data insights on your driving, on your car. And then the flip side to it, the infrastructure part, is essentially letting developers tap into that data through permission granting and access to then build better car apps that weren't possible before, because a lot of these car companies don't really give access to developers or to builders or to anyone really to build any sort of new use cases for cars to really tap into. And so, or for car owners to tap into. But to go back to that question, I think DIMO is actually interesting because our consumer is our network. Our drivers are essentially the product for our developers. The more drivers we have, the more developers want to come to DIMO and build cars or build apps for all cars. And so for us, we've kind of been, for these past 3 years that DIMO has been around, I've only been there for a year or so of that. DIMO has been really focused on building out the consumer part of it. So we now have 160,000 cars connected across the US, across Europe and Canada. And now that we have all of those users connected, now we're trying to think through how do we monetize this ecosystem of driving data to give developers access to that and then have them build apps that reward drivers for their charging data, that reward drivers for taking a trip to their car mechanic versus going a different route. So that's kind of where we're at now. It's starting to build this out, this developer community. But really that's been made possible because we've been able to kind of solve the chicken before the egg. And so now we're kind of able to focus on bringing in those developers, and then now we're starting to see revenue because developers are paying to access this data. And so it's kind of the example of what was said previously by the other panelists. So,
do you have a driver and developer, people that are developing and selling
Sorry.
their data, doing both, being a driver and a developer?
Oh yeah, I mean,
So they don't
honestly,
pay
that's
for the
kind of
data?
a prerequisite. How can you build car apps good car apps for people if you don't have your own car and connect it to DIMO and then test what you're building on your own car? So.
All right, next question, guys, is about, can you give us the metrics that you guys are using on the Web3 side, like both Web3 side and Web2, series of metrics that you set up in a DePIN project, and what do you monitor in order to kind of make sure the marketing is on the right path?
Yes, I'll start. So, I mean, I don't really think there are Web3 metrics. We should be building for everyone, not just the people in this room and the people who go to Consensus Hong Kong and all of these conferences and stay in our echo chamber. Our metrics are really driving car connections. So people who come to DIMO, download the app, connect their car, are engaging with the app, checking their driving stats, checking their car stats. Those are kind of one set of our core metrics on the consumer side of things. The flip side of things, of the developer side, That's where we really care about how many developer licenses are being minted, how many people are trying to tap into this network of vehicle data, and then how many projects are coming in and actually building valuable solutions that help improve the day-to-day car owner's life. I still think we're figuring out a lot of the developer side of metrics. Our consumer side is really kind of honed in because that's something that we've been focusing on for the past 3 years, versus the other metrics are something that we're still kind of ironing out and testing and experimenting with.
Yeah, a lot of people will, I don't like myself for saying this, but one of the things that I think was crucial for us to grow Chainlink and to be just successful as a Web3 company is OKRs. It helps you be able to stay focused. So every single company is going to have different metrics that they track. A lot of them will also be similar to what it would be at a general, traditional tech company, right? User numbers, signups, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But being able to have a standard focus of what you want to reach really is crucial for teams, especially what you see in the noise. And it's just like every single day there's a different president token, there's a different dog token. It's just crucial to be able to stay focused and then drive those metrics so that you can see the growth that is happening. And so, yeah, I think that's like the biggest key of any Web3 team is to be able to just know what those metrics are, be able to decide that strategy as a team, and then be able to drive those each quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of them have hit pretty much like every point. Like, you need to have a North Star. It doesn't matter if you're a DePIN company or an AI company or any company, really. Your whole company has to pull towards one unified mission. And then you break that down into subsections for your BD team, your marketing team, your engineering team. Everybody, every quarter, like you said, is achieving towards something. When you're thinking about like marketing metrics specifically, you can then break that down into, okay, is it a customer acquisition? Is it a distribution game? Is it like vanity metrics that I want to grow? And you could just basically like list all of the metrics, and there's so many of them, and there's different faucets you can turn on to like increase your metrics on any of these levels. And in Web3 specifically, we've learned to game any metric that exists out there. You come out with something cool like, Kaido's Yaps, and give it a couple of weeks and everybody will figure out how to game that game, right? And so it's really like a hard battle and a hard edge that you're constantly going with. I think for DePIN, it's a little bit more concrete, because when you have somebody who has to pay for a physical device, then go upload it, then you can onboard it, and then calculate uptime, runtime, like how often is somebody using this. Then you can calculate developer health, like something like our project where we're looking at how often does a developer contribute, how many lines of code, how well is this written, does it work? You can then go into all of these specifics, and so that's when the metrics come into play. Early on, most projects are really just playing a mind share visibility game, how many people know about me, can I go into a conference venue like this today, and how many people know about my project, right? That's an immediate metric, a marketing metric that you can measure and right off the bat, and then you kind of grow from there step by step. So
can I have a show of hands in the room, anyone who played RuneScape? Okay, cool. I think the whole principle of metrics is cost signaling. You have to pick a number go up when you're trying to do a token. Depends what you do, depends what you care about. And I think the reason I say RuneScape is if you're rocking mithril armor, then everyone knows that you've done the work, right? So when you look at metrics, and there's a great Paul Drucker quote, which is, I don't know if it's him actually, but it's essentially when a metric becomes a measure, it ceases to be useful, right? So originally, in the previous cycles, followers was a big thing. And now it means nothing, right? So the reason that Kaito was so successful is because it formed a new cost signaling metric that told you, oh, this is real. But eventually it's going to become commoditized like everything, right? So I think when you look at metrics, whether it's financial, on-chain, TVL, it's hardest to get. I mean, you can rent TVL, but it's hardest to get, right? Volume is an easy game to play because you can, well, some people do wash trade. And then other things like social metrics are cost, they're kind of like cost arbitrage between the point where you are, the point where you want to get to. And it depends where in your journey you are, whether you're fundraising, whether you're pre-product, whether you're post-product, or during the product. So that's like the external side. The internal side is exactly as my panelist said, is you got to pick the things that make your core drivers work for the long term, because I think a great quote is any tech can be popular, but good tech stays popular. So it doesn't matter the initial burst, it's about how you keep it. But yeah, that's what I think about metrics. I think that you just got to pick the right ones that make sense for you, that you can control, and that's what you signal. But if you pick a one that's easy to make, then the signal doesn't work because it's not cost signaling. So I think that's what metrics are for externally. Internally, it's very different.
And so Kartik, on your side, to follow up on this, what has been the most, where did you got the best ROI in terms of marketing measure? What brings the most value according to your own KPI, let's say? What would you recommend to the other project here? Like, what have been very, very helpful?
This is a good question. There's two kinds of problem solving in the world. There's pre-rationalization and post-rationalization, right? Pre-rationalization is, oh, the data said that, they did that, so we will incrementally make that better, and I will get to that point, right? A lot of mistakes in marketing are entirely data-driven. The invention of penicillin was a complete accident, right? Facebook started as a hot or not thing. So you got to look at, and also policemen or cops over here are very good post-rationalist deductivists. All that means is they look at a situation and they don't look at like what the pre-existing data was. They look at, oh, what could have happened there? Let's try something. Here's a hunch. So I think the best marketing that gets the best results is just do weird shit that only you can do. If you play everyone else's game and you do like, oh, my followers are up too, like no one cares. So I think the best way to plan marketing is to find what's your unique thing, not a USP. It's like, what are you going to talk about internally to your team members and be like, this is what we say? Because everyone can say like the tagline, but the tagline is usually best what you say to each other, and just do weird stuff. I think that's what we got the best ROI from, is like doing stuff that we thought was interesting and fun and not necessarily data-driven. Like, for example, Nuffle, a lot of people told us, or the founders really, I'm head of marketing, but I told the founders, do not use yellow fur as a thing in your branding. No one will take you seriously. But what ended up happening was every conference we went to, they were like, who are you guys, Nuffle? Oh, the yellow fur guys! And then, and it just made everyone happy. And then it was a risk, but it was a good risk. All good outcomes are on the other side of risk. Otherwise, you just blend into everything else. So take risks, do fun stuff, and then if it doesn't work, forget about it, it never happened.
Nice.
Same question in terms of like metrics. I think that's like a great response, honestly, from Jin. He's probably one of the best people in growth in the space right now, honestly. But it's really about like find your unique voice. You look at Monad, they've kicked off like certain things. You look, the intern meta, that's where it all started. You got to find like what sets you apart and just go hard on it. And then once it becomes like commoditized and everybody's doing it, then like step away, right? And I think the biggest like marketing metric to drive after is like how many people are doing this. If it's a small like group, do it. If it's like a large volume, and if you're like, there's like a recent one where I think it was you that told me this. If somebody at the gym was wearing a Bitcoin T-shirt, it's a high signal to sell, right? Like if your like mom and dad are asking you about crypto, it's probably a signal that it's become mass. And although we want to care about it, it's like the less people participating, the more likely your chances of standing out are. And so like similarly with metrics, some like standard metrics, like being able to track the health of your community is like very, very core. And it's not like a numbers game, but rather a quality signal. And being able to track that. So you as a founder kind of have to be in there, and like you have to be listening to them, and unless you're participating, you're never going to know. And like that's your best signal and your best metric. Like how happy are people? Like are they actually like paying attention, or are they like cycling through? And that's been like a big way for us to judge whether something is working or not. And it's often a gut check more than like a solid metric. Like it, as a marketer in this space or a growth person, you very quickly know once you roll out a campaign how it's landing, and it's constantly gut checking yourself and like reevaluating rather than waiting for like solid numbers to come in, because solid numbers are often like a post analysis, and then you can do a retrospective and like redo the thing differently, but you can't pivot in the middle of something through like hard metrics.
Nice.
Yeah, I think and I'll die on this hill, there's no better money to spend than on community. Your community will either make or break a project. And so the highest return on investment, and it doesn't have to be, as mentioned before from the other panelists, a lot of these community metrics can also be gamed, and they could be faked, and that's not a real community. And so sometimes, time is money, and just being able to talk with your community and spend that 5 minutes of just being able to have a conversation with them and be like, hey, how did you find us? Thanks so much for making those memes. Thanks so much for that cool video that you made. Incentivizes them to want to go and make more videos. And that's beyond just having to, pay them in tokens, pay them in an airdrop, pay them in cash under the table, right? It's really just being able to relate with the community and be part of that community is going to be the best money that any project spends.
Thanks.
I know we're almost at time, so I'll make this one quick. The thing that's worked for us the best is partnerships. At the end of the day, is partnering with brands that are bigger than our own. That's partially the reason why we chose to migrate from Polygon to Base, frankly. Base is an exciting project, and they're only going to get better, and positioning yourself with winners is how you win. That's a core partnership that's helping us drive virality, engagement on content, and ultimately that ends up being the top of funnel that ends up converting people into new car connections and users. The tangible side of partnerships is working with kind of other similar big name partners. In our case, Coinbase, we did a learn and earn campaign with them. Anyone who connected their car got $25 of DIMO in their Coinbase wallet. So things like that cost us a lot of money, but generated true and genuine conversions. Yes, of course, it's crypto. There was a lot of gaming for sure. But those projects are exactly kind of what got us to grow, not from just 100,000 car connections to now 160,000 car connections. And those partnerships are really going to be ultimately the thing that we can scale and be able to do a lot more of to get towards 1 million cars connected and then, ultimately billions. So that's my thoughts on that question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys.